Hey Otter. Can you hear me? I played with my mic a little bit. Does it sound any better? Nice. I think what was happening was that it was using my built-in laptop mic instead of the webcam, but I think we fixed it. Alright, we'll wait just a little bit. See if we can get some more people here, and then I'll start. Welcome, welcome. How is everybody? Everybody good? I'll be right back. All right. I think we're ready to start. Here we go. So what did we do last time? We started with these circles, we shaped it, got here until you hit this point. So we're just going to keep going, shaping it, making it look like what we want, working with clay. Making it look like this picture. Bring this guy forward. So what should we do? This neck head area needs some work. Just raise all of these up. Maybe a little bit lower. Yeah. So, what's new with everyone? Worm sniffing bunny. Nice. I told everyone that trait was gonna be, you were gonna want it someday. I told you so. I wouldn't say he knows everything either. Never know what's gonna happen tomorrow. Not even me. Right now, beans are for alchemy. It's a nice reason just to add items. Gives everything a purpose. Pretty happy with that. Did I make the body look exactly the same? No. No, I wouldn't do that. Figure out this head shape. Looks like it slants forward. Indeed. And that would mean, how thick is it? Pretty thick. Let's bring all of these forward. Get the eyes too. Let's just try. Let's just try to make this a big fat head. This is Primstar 1. Be very original. So I texture with the new Blender, but this is a very, very old version of Blender. And I think the reason, I haven't tried to do it recently, the reason I prefer this is because I can modify different levels of detail, and they actually impact each other, whereas I think in the newer versions of Blender, the multi-res is put into a modifier, and if you mold a higher level or a lower level, those don't those don't affect each other. So if I bring these in this version, that will be reflected in the higher version. The head is kind of slanted inwards there, but I don't believe that happens with the new multi-res, so I just prefer it for sculpts. For other types of mesh creation, I much prefer newer Blender. But Primstar 2 is only for newer versions of Blender. And that could all be wrong, also. It's been a while since I tried, but this works, so stuck in my ways now. Let's make this guy nice and angular. So we're going to flatten things out. Inflate and undo a little bit of what we did. It was too much. It also gets me moving back and forth between different versions of Blender. Different shortcuts for everything, different key bindings. Oh, someone asked me to put the keys that I'm pressing, make them show up on the screen. Let me see if I can do that. Blender show keys. Oh, I think it's an add-on. I'll have to figure that out later. Yep. Sorry guys. You'll never know what keys I'm pressing. Just have to be a mystery. He's got a pointy butt. Let's fix that. Yeah, the shape is there, so it's just figuring out exactly what needs to be done. Hey, Sarah. Okay, let's look at this face again. Let's lower that jaw area on the head. Where am I? What's going on? Flatten this area a bit. Jaw's gonna have to come down. Did we do work on the jaw? We did a little bit of work. Let's do a little more. The nose holes are done with texturing. Maybe we'd have enough vertices to bring in a couple. Oh yeah, we'll have enough to do a slight indent there. But we don't have too many vertices to work with, so can't do too much. That all has to be made up for with clever texturing. But we can add those in right now after this jaw. Make this more like a mouth. Let's see. Alright, so what should we talk about today? What do you guys want to talk about? Give me something. Anything. Doesn't have to be about the model or texturing or modeling. It wouldn't be surprises if I talked about them. But really, for the birthday, I am trying to finish something that everybody wants. That's my main goal. And then, secondary to that, we may have a special item, but there is definitely one main goal that I'm working towards. Thank you. Thank you, Otter. Those were holding on to those for a while, and I've got more that need to go in, and then more that are in the works, but I have to recolor a bunch of different pictures for all the different eye stones. So I have the artist make one version, and then, like for the potions, I recolored all of that, which is a lot of work because they're done in layers, which makes it so they can be modified really easily and nicely, but all those different layers make it difficult. So eventually we'll have new pretty eye stone pictures, and everything else will look the same, and I'm excited for that, but it takes a while to get those pictures made. Eventually we're gonna have some beautiful, beautiful inventory images. You can kind of breathe. These don't really look too great because we're just working with these, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these 6 faces, 9 faces. I don't know if I can spare too much more for those, depending on what kind of texturing needs to happen in this whole area. I could squeeze them down a little bit, but it's most likely just gonna have to happen in the texturing portion of the creation process. Alright, what else? What other questions? Hit me with some coding or anything. What do you guys want to know about? Looking kinda like a pig. Why do you look so much like a pig? Yeah, it isn't. It looks like a pig nose, but we're trying to figure out. Needs to be smaller. Lower. Needs to be lowered. Oops. Means that all this has to come down. No questions, huh? No programming questions, no coding? Tell me your app idea, I'll tell you how to make it. Don't worry, I won't steal it, I don't have time. Man, I wish I had more vertices to work with. Alright, I gotta stop playing with that part. redo, undo, 3do. Alright, I'll sit here in silence if you guys want. I can do that. It's gonna make me very uncomfortable, but I'll do it. Didn't get very much sleep, so I can't think of too much to say right now. It's just weird sitting here in silence. Usually I have a video on or some music, but it's very strange to just be sitting here with nothing. So I can fill that void by talking if I have something to talk about. But what? But what? Did not leave much room up here for me to work with either. It's like no vertices at all. Yeah, we're gonna leave that ring off. We're gonna leave that off. I have decided. Just keep it all natural. Alright, we're just gonna have to grab some vertices from up here. Rich with vertices. Just smush them all down. That should give us a little more to work with. Hopefully we don't need those up here. I don't think so. Just completely undo our shape that we made and worked so hard for. Now we have all of these beautiful faces. Okay. he is getting eyebrows. I need, so when I paint onto this, or when someone paints onto this, the more vertices we have in the area, the less texture stretching will happen. So if we're going to put details right here, paint them on, we'll have more pixels to work with the more of these vertices we have. That's why I just dragged everything, smushed it all down to that area. It does look a little mad right now. Need it to be a hint. I've had worse nicknames. I think this head needs to be a little taller. It's this area right here that needs to be just lifted, and then he should look happy. Or concerned. Your eyes sure do look ugly. Yeah, just gotta get that shape right first. I've been playing with sculpting in a newer version of Blender. I've been spoiled by by dynamic topology. So basically, if I wanted to grab his head and make a horn come out of it, just pull. Oh wait. Just pull, and it would create new vertices all along that line, keeping tons of little details in there. It's wonderful. It truly is. Yep, I was reading about animated mesh. Unfortunately, we still won't be able to take advantage of it because they don't let you load meshes through LSL, through scripting. which is because of griefers. They could essentially, a mesh can be arbitrarily complicated. So it could be one face, or it could be 10,000 faces. It could be a million faces, and there's no way to really tell. With sculpts, you can load them via UUID, but that's because they will always have the same complexity. Someone could just, so then temples, the way temples load and your pets load from that one attachment, all of that just, it just won't function, which is a shame because animated mesh would be beautiful. But they're also, you have to use the same skeleton as the avatar. There's a lot of limitations there. It's unfortunate. It's nice that they're doing it, and maybe someone will be able to use it, but current iteration won't be able to use it for crafties. Sculpt would be 64 by 64. You can see it right here. In the UV window. And it's not that it can have it, it always has that amount. So even really simple sculpts, they take up the same amount, which is actually why sculpts are not super performant and why they're trying to move away from it. Because they take up a good amount of space for something pretty simple usually. Yeah, all of these have the same amount of faces, and that's why I have to keep stretching things around, squishing them different places so that I can get those the faces where I need them. What am I doing? I feel like I'm just making no progress. How do you get it to show the UV image? Do you mean like in this window right here, or in Second Life? Or in Blender, the program? Show where? What do you mean? Oh, you just load an image, so right here. I don't know if you guys can read what that says, but this image, I could just open up any image and it would. No, you can also just paint onto it. It's just any normal image, so you can load it from your computer, or you can create it here. So if we wanted to start texturing this, I guess cows aren't that color, so let's do yes, it will. It should show the UV map once you bake it. Are you trying to do a sculpt, or are you trying to do mesh? So when you make a sculpt, I think that the second version of Primstar would do it too. It should create an object that's already set up with a UV map, because when it generates the sculpt image that actually holds the model data, then that's based around the same texture space that the texturing is. So it should already be UV unwrapped and ready to go. So if you go, I'm not sure what version of Blender you're using, but usually in this area you can change which render setting your viewport window uses, and so you want to change that to texture to see the textures on the sculpt. And then I usually keep this second pane open, so you have your 3D viewport, and then over here would be your UV image texturing area. But we're not texturing right now. So back to pushing and pulling. Yeah, which version of Blender are you using? And are you using a plugin to make sculpts? Yeah, I'm not intimately familiar with JAS. And there are so many different ways to do the same thing. It would be... Yeah, I keep 2 different versions of Blender installed on my computer. So I keep 2.49b, which is this program right here you're looking at, really old, and then the latest release usually, unless that doesn't work for me, and then I revert back. Because newer versions of Blender make texturing wonderful. .79b, that might be what I have. Yeah, I would not be able to help you with the sculpting workflow there, just because it's so specific to Second Life, and I use an older version. But if you want to get a UV image to show, all you have to do in every version of Blender is just go into edit mode for the mesh, select everything so it's all highlighted, and then you can go to your UV image pane over here, and you can just click and open an image, or click new, and that'll put it on there. And then make sure your viewport is set to display textures, and you can start drawing directly on it in texture paint mode. If you want, after I get more of this done, I can open up my other version of Blender and you can point out where your problems are. Yeah, these are two, like this. Yeah, this session is just going to be tons of little micro details. Probably is not as exciting as the first one. You see it all come into play, all fall into place. On the back of the head shape, we don't have very much to work with. Judging from this image, it looks like it curves upwards smoothly. I keep adjusting it, and it just doesn't go to where I want it to go. We're going to change that right now. Thing to be longer. Could that be it? Yeah, the back will be made to fit the head shape. Just gotta get the head shape right. It also is very important where we define the head ending and the neck beginning, because that's how we're able to animate the creatures in Second Life. So doing that, tilting the head, giving it a quizzical look, you know, make sure that your model will still hold up when you move it in parts like that. Yeah, we will adjust that. I mean, I can just make the head smaller. Just need to get the shape in the back right. I gotta figure out exactly how it should flow up to the top. Do we want it to... Oh, looks like a weird hat. How much do I have to work with down here? You'll never see these vertices, so we can take some from right here. Give me all your vertices. Okay. Okay. Alright, now we can play with the back. Make it look like it just kind of flows into that. And then, once we have that, we'll have to adjust it so the head can still move around it and look okay. Thank you, Blade. Much more like a bull right now. Pretty beefy. Let's tilt his head around a little bit and see. Actually, let's take a copy. Let's back up, and so we can see our progress, and then let's do another copy for a quick little pose. Okay, so it's not too out of place when you move the head. That jaw definitely needs to come up on the sides. See what that looks like when you open it up. Oh, it needs to come out in the back. Better. Better, but not perfect. Try to make it look like it's smiling a bit when it opens its mouth. Let's give it a little curve right here. This part needs to curve up more, so it'll mesh into the bottom of the head. Let's thicken this whole area. Such a balancing act. Looks so happy from the front, not so much from the side though. Change that in the head as well. I want to keep him happy. A little more happy, but not happy enough. It's never enough, cow. More vertice smushing. Did I get any? Okay. Gotta make this mouth look okay when it's open and when it's closed. And it is a pain in the butt. You can't use standard animated mesh. One day. Alright, there's a happy cow. Gosh darn it. Alright, we're going to have to take away parts of the head here. Have the jaw take over that part of the head. It's going to have to happen. I didn't want to have to do it, but it's not going to look right if we don't. Let's see, what's the rotation? Set to... Okay. Yep, each part has to be exported separately. I mean, it's an image, that's what sculpts are, so each part has to be rendered. Wait, let me save before I do this, just in case. So I'm going to render the head. And it turns into that. It generates a sculpt map. And then each one of those has to be put into Second Life. And then it has to be rebuilt in Second Life. and then we can see how we're doing with the smile. Not so bad. Lipstick. We'll have to save the lipstick for an attachment. I mean, I guess we don't. Here. Here. Give the people what they want. This and this. So, let's go to... Huh. It's not letting me select. Well, no lipstick. Alright. Don't want to mess anything else up. Alright, that lines up pretty well. perfectly, though. And then hopefully the seam will be much less noticeable when it's all textured. Fortunately, I can't control the shaders in Second Life, but if we could control the shaders too, I could make that completely invisible. Alright, gonna leave it at that for now. So we're gonna move on to something else before I go crazy. Little lump down here. Give me something to talk about, guys. Give me something. Something about video game design. Let's do it. I'll answer it. I'll answer your questions. I know everyone fell asleep. Well, you're here. What are your questions? What questions do you have, Otter? Let's design something together. Some system. Let's do a thought experiment. What do you want to make? An app, a game, a program, some software. It would be difficult because of how... I'll answer Blade's question first. So, the unbonded, yes, that would be very difficult. The way it works is to alleviate strain on our database. We have a bunch of caching servers. So when you click on a button, say you want to load your unbondeds, that goes to one of our servers, which is called a load balancer. That load balancer then determines which application server it wants to go to, and we can add as many of these as we want. These are where most of the logic happens. And those application servers can either go to our database server or to 2 other caching servers. And the caching servers basically help stabilize the database. It takes off all of the strain, all extraneous strain from the database. So if you load something, say your unbondeds, if it's not in the cache, the application servers will look in the cache, can't find it, then it'll say, okay, we'll fall back to the database, grab that, and then stuff it into the cache for next time. And what that does is it lets us keep the game running. The database doesn't get flooded. And so your unbondeds are stored in a paginated way, because they're all ordered, right? You can send it to the top of your list and it's ordered in a specific way. But that cache also gets invalidated every time you add a new unbonded or you make a change to that list. So if you load a page and then you jump to another page, there's all this stuff in the middle, and if you then catch a new creature or you reorder, everything gets pushed down, but we don't have a way to basically push pages that haven't been loaded on the client. So that's why right now it has to be sequentially. We could get like clever with it and do a little more cache invalidation, but then that would put more of a strain on the server or on the database. So right now, no. The search option is meant to help with some of that, filter through them, and eventually we can. It's just a bigger project than I think it's worth. And honestly, I may start putting a limit on the number of unbonded your HUD can hold, because it is just getting kind of crazy, the numbers that you guys have in there. So just require you guys to maybe sort through them all more often, and that would help all of us, I think. Yeah, some people are sitting on almost like 100,000, and it's just too much. It's too much. So when they load a page, it has to basically find all of their creatures and then figure out which ones it needs, and it's too much. But I think that the effort would be better spent, instead of putting a jump to a page in, which would be more difficult to do. Just making the search system more robust would be a better alternative, because that, if it's made better, that'll make it easier for you guys, and having that system means that we can then use that search in other places too, like the shopping app and wherever else we need search. Search is very convenient. So I think that a jump to page, you won't see that, but you will see better search. Yeah, search by trait is something I want to do. It will, we've only done this once, but I think search by trait, when I add it in, because it's actually on my to-do list to do, it's been there for a little while, but kind of recently because I thought of a way to do it, but we'll still have to have some downtime. So the downtime, and that's because your creatures have their traits stored in a separate table. And that table is humongous because every unbonded that's caught, every single trait, and there could be up to four for a creature. So the creatures table in the database is really, really big. The traits is even bigger. And so we'll have to add new indexes on the traits table to make a search functional, to make it fast and work, make it so it doesn't crash the system. Because also, what I was talking about with the unbonded and how we use our caching data, or our caching servers, we can't really do that with search because your searches are all going to be pretty unique, especially within your home. Those searches are all very unique, and where I can, I keep strain from the database server. But when we do searches for the shopping app, that all pretty much hits the database because there's just so much data to sort through that we have to rely on the database to do it, because I don't think that our cache could hold all of it. But that is on my list. Yeah, the traits will be searchable. That is a promise I will make. I can't promise when it will happen, but it will happen because it just makes sense, right? It just makes sense to have it. Traits, and what else was I going to add? There's something else too. There's a few more things. I definitely want to make the shopping app just nicer, make it look cleaner, and give it some more features. It's coming together slowly, but a few more focus sessions and probably have that working pretty well. What other questions did we have? I hope affinity would be good. There's something else too. Let's see, what other questions? Enjoying the broadcast, thank you, your eyes. How long does it take to build the back end of a gaming system? That would completely depend on the gaming system, but if you have like specific questions, then I can answer that. But the backend could mean a lot of stuff. It could be servers that just handle positions and like active game state, like you'd have for an FPS, or an MMORPG that has like position and really fast-paced, twitchy interaction data. Or it could be a backend more like Crafties has that I was talking about, where it's has like API access to. So Crafties, for instance, within the back end of Crafties, there are still so many systems at play. So we have, if you wanted to just do an inventory system, that's something in and of itself. But you would basically, at the lowest level, or the easiest, most simple version of it, would just be a database with a schema that would have items that are associated to players, and then you would just need a way to access that. So you can make that really, really easily. It's just, if you did it simply, you probably wouldn't do it in a way where it could scale up to a bunch of users depending on how frequently people are accessing the system and things like that. But that would be just that simple version of an inventory would take less than a day of work. Our inventory system is much more robust than that, because it has to be, but that's all about just clever indexing of tables and normalization, denormalization, which basically means normalization is really important. the top of the back leg. Oh yeah, the top of the back leg will, the whole back leg will have to be made more defined. Normalization, basically, and indexes, they're basically ways to keep your database organized and make it so you can access and think of things neatly. So essentially, I don't want to give too much of our schema away or table names, but okay, so let's say you have a bunch of different types of items, and then you want to define those. So you could, if you were making your player inventory table, you could say Chris has one string item. And you would basically store that if you wanted to do it in the most naive way, like a spreadsheet. And it would just say the top, player name, item name. And then as you go down, it would say Chris, string, maybe player name, item name, and quantity. So Chris, string 1, Otter, string, she has 2. So the problem with that is that if you're storing the names of people and the names of the items in that table, there were 2 strings listed right there. So Chris has a string, Otter has a string. And storing the word, that value, takes up a ton of space. It's unneeded space, and it's hard to search for too. If I wanted to search for everyone who has a string, the system would have to scan through every single row and look for the exact word representation of string, which is starting with S, T, R, I, N, G. So instead of that, what you could do is say player name, item type ID, and then quantity. So the item type ID would then be a number. And so in another table, another spreadsheet separately from that, you could then have item name, and item type ID. So string might have the ID of 100. So then over here in the first table, or the first spreadsheet we have the player name, the item type ID, the quantity, so it would be Chris, 100 for the item type ID, and then 1. So when we look for and we find the item type ID of 100, we can then take that, look in the other table, and see that 100 is the equivalent of string. Now that's normalization, and it's important because that just saved us in that one row. How much did it save us? An integer would be, let's say it's 8 bits, 32, as opposed to some large number. But imagine if we were just storing a bunch of those words for string, it would be a ton. The other thing is that when the system is looking for searching for something, it's much easier to compare numbers than it is to compare words. So if I want to find every single player who has a cherry, if I want to look for that, I can tell the system to search for CHERRY and then scan through 100,000 rows, or I could tell it to search for the number 2 and scan through 100,000 rows. So the complexity definitely goes up with the number of entries you have in your database. So that's all just about design planning for large loads and things like that. And that's one aspect. Then indexing is essentially like a phone book or an index in a dictionary. Or not a dictionary is an index. Index in like a textbook. So it says, okay, here are the T's, and the T's start on page, 120. So if I'm looking for, if I tell the database to look for an item that starts with a T, it doesn't have to start at 0, it knows to start at 120. So it just cuts out that whole top half. I feel like that might have been explained a little bit confusingly. Did any of that make sense? Let's see, the backend system. So that was just really an inventory example, and that's just designing the database portion of it. Then you have to write code so you can actually access that. And that's a whole nother thing. And then you have to take the caching layer and figure out how you want the code that you wrote that accesses the database to intelligently use the cache. You can make it so it doesn't use the cache at all. You can make it so it doesn't use the cache at all. Or you have to tell it when to invalidate cache data, when to rely on cache data, how long it should store stuff in the cache if it does pull it from the database, things like that. And then you have to write a format for that backend system that has all of the data to then send it to a client. And that can be done in a lot of ways. You could just take a bunch of words that are mushed together by a special character, like an asterisk. And then your client might know that, okay, so every time I see an asterisk, that's a new piece of data. But a better way is to use something called JSON, or the equivalent, which lets you, just staring at this cow talking, basically define variables and pass them in a very richly defined format. So there's less room for error there. But yeah, so that's another step, is figuring out how to interface with your client. Client being the program, the thing that the user sees. So that would be like your Second Life viewer, or the apps in Crafty's case, a website, things like that. Now, but when you say backend, that really could be so many different things. So like, our backend actually is comprised of 6 different types of servers, and I think we're running 9 servers altogether. And so for us, that means that those all have to work together. And so for that to happen, I've written a bunch of different access layers and ways for them to talk to each other. But that's another thing you have to take into account, is how you're going to communicate, the type of network you're going to use, things like that. Or you can use off-the-shelf solutions too. Unity has some cool stuff. Unreal just has like a replication thing, replication state. I believe that Fortnite basically is just using their off-the-shelf. You know, I'm not positive on that, so don't quote me, but you basically can just code the client and then replicate what happens on the client on the server. So that's basically for things like physics and games that aren't long-term. So like Battle Royale works really well there. And fast-paced, like FPS stuff. Things that will be destroyed at the end of the session and then restarted. But if you're doing an MMORPG, like I'm trying to do with Crafties here, then you have to be a little more careful with your back end. And I mean, they have to be careful too, especially because dealing with cheaters in a giant game like that is, I'm sure it's not fun, no matter what type of game it is. But you can, the more you replicate, the easier it is to develop that back end, because you're just basically making one system. So we actually have servers that are written in, or running node.js, which I will probably end up using for like real-time, like movement-based stuff. I have some stuff you guys could probably actually access it if I opened it up, but just quick position updates so you guys can see each other and like chat. So guild chat and friend chat, those fast real-time interactions are all running on our node servers. And those are good because they have a socket connection, and so I'm excited to play around with that more in the future, because that will be what lets us actually create an explorable world that you guys can go through and explore together. But that's a different, I would say a different type of back-end system for a different type of game. So yeah, it's hard to define exactly without having like a very specific case. If you ask me specific, like ask me something very specific and I will tell you how it's done. Or try to, you know. Every day I learn how much I don't know what I'm talking about. I understand that. Do you have a game that, is there something like super cool that you've seen in a game that you wonder, or just really anything? What's the coolest thing you've seen in a game? Or any piece of software? I appreciate that. What about no other games. What about some cool software you've seen, or websites, or something in Crafties? If you want to know how that works, I can attempt to explain. No phone apps or anything. I'll give you some technical insight into Crafties if you ask something more specific, and if I'm comfortable sharing it. Darn, I was looking forward to rambling on and on again. How do I animate the pets? So, a long time ago, at the beginning of Crafties, I made a Prim-based animation system. And it's gotten a little bit of love over the years, but it's mostly stayed the same because there's not been much movement in that area from Linden Labs. So it's a lot like this. When I take all of these parts into Second Life and then I rebuild the pets, so let's see, I'm going to build it here. Oh, whoops, wrong thing. Flip normals. Are the animations designed for Ascended pets? They're all designed for the body that they're in. You can't really recycle them because of how it works. So the reason that I have to make these all in different parts, even if they're may not need that for detail's sake, is because the animation system is literally just me dragging these parts around. So, and this would happen in Second Life. Just move that around. If I wanted to, say we wanted to make this cow rear up on its hind legs. I just move every single piece. Keep them all in the right areas. And then the animation system will take care of some stuff. So I try to keep everything asymmetrical, all of the animations, because it will mirror them for me on the fly, which was some code I was pretty happy I came up with. And then, but yeah, so then this would be a frame. And so I'll save the frame and I would name it maybe stand 1 or rear 1. Then I would move on to the next one. So this cow is going to have to sit down because that's in the code every, oh, just have to restart here. every crafty has to be able to sit or the equivalent. So then I would make a new frame. I would name it sit. So I gotta rebuild. So then I would just do kind of the same thing. Just move all of the parts until we get the desired look. I wish it was this fast in Second Life, but it takes me so much longer to move the pieces in World. So, and it also adds on to the way we have to model everything because, and texture them, because the textures have to look okay when the prims are splayed apart in different positions like this. We take the tail, turn it to the side a little bit. But yeah, so then I would just take this, it would be a frame, and call it sit. Let's see. And then I would make one for standing, one for walk, or actually make a couple for standing, a couple for walking, running, flying, and then the animation system takes those frames, and when it's actually running, when you see them, they're just interpolating between them. So if it goes from sitting to standing, I think I have it set to generate mathematically one frame between the motion, so it smooths it out a little bit. But that being said, all of that being said, it's garbage. Because it would be so nice, we could have such beautiful, beautiful animations if we could just get that, like any other gaming engine, just make it so we could rig the creatures and do this. I will create a skeleton for you right now, and I will show you how much better this would be. And how much better it will be, because I've got something in the works. And all of the creatures that are in production are rigged in this way that I'm about to show you. So first things first, apply the multi-res. Then join them. So now they're all connected as one piece. Now we'll create an armature. You know what? Let's do this in the newer version of Blender. Where I'm more familiar with the rigging and all of that. Rename. So the Animesh system will not work for Crafties, and there are a few reasons for that, but the biggest one I talked about earlier is that, one sec, let me set up this other window and then I'll keep talking about that. Alright, so now we have a newer version of Blender open. So the biggest reason for that is, yeah, it's because when you see creatures spawn from your home temples or the way that your creature attachment loads, it's dynamically loading all of the parts from our servers. So what that means is that the sculpt maps and those models are being sent from our servers, that data, and then your creature attachment or the wild objects get that data, and then they form into the correct shapes and have the correct animations that were just sent to them. Mesh doesn't let you do that using LSL. It's just a limitation that Second Life had to put in. I think that they had dynamic loading of mesh models through LSL at one point, I believe, I'm not positive, but the reason they had to take it out is because people could just import the most detailed, intricate mesh, which is extremely easy to make. People do it on accident all the time, and then they could have a one prim with one sculpt or one script inside of it, then just taking one land impact and then morphing or spawning that really detailed, high quality mesh. And apparently they couldn't figure out a way to counteract that, or they didn't want to put in the work. Either way, it means that we can't load mesh dynamically like we can with sculpts. So the home temples would either have to have every single creature, a model for every single creature put into them, and then whenever we release a new creature, we'd have to put out new home temples with the contents updated with the model of the species, and we couldn't use like half of the clever code that's been made for dynamically loading like skins might work, but models and things like that. And then for the creature attachments, that wouldn't work at all because you can't even, it would be attached to you, so you couldn't just res an object. So we would have to probably go back to individual objects for every single species, or for every single creature, which is how Crafty started. The problem with that is that Second Life does not have a way to protect from duping, and that was a humongous headache for us in the past, and it still is, sort of, but I've found ways to monitor and combat it. But the duping problem alone means that we can't do that. Not to mention the insane workload that would be to move back to that system and get mesh put in place with animations and all of that. And their limitations on the skeleton that can be used. So I'm making right here on the screen, you can see I'm actually creating a skeleton for this creature. This is a custom skeleton. All of our creatures that are in production have these now. But if we were going to go with Animesh, then we would have to use, I believe it's the base avatar skeleton is what they're still using, and then you have to deform that to work with your mesh, a lot like rigged mesh currently for avatars. Unless something has changed, because I have not looked at that for a while. But unfortunately, as much as I would love to have some beautiful fluid animations, which I'm about to show you, is very possible with Crafties, I don't think that's going to be happening inside of Second Life anytime soon. But we are developing our own client, and that means that eventually you'll be able to play Crafties outside of Second Life, and it'll be like a real game, which I cannot wait for. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just giving structure to the skeleton of the cow. Then I'm going to parent it. Oh, gotta remove doubles. So check this out. If it did an okay job with the automatic weights, we can move these bones and we get these smooth animations. Look at that. Just move the legs independently. And everything stays in place the way it should. And so you can make these rigs really, really complex too. But we could not do this with the current animation system because you can see that the vertices and the entire model has actually kind of deformed to fit the skeleton. And that's awesome. Like in Second Life right now, I couldn't straighten out this tail if I wanted to animate it. It has to stay curved. But here, look at that. Straight tail. I want it to curve up. I've got that covered too. So that's one thing that's really cool. Just very fluid, natural mesh deforms. Now another thing, it actually makes animating even easier because you can do things like this. So to do it, I'm going to have to name some parts here. So that bone is going to be the head. This one is going to be hand.L because it's a left hand. This one is going to be hand.R because it's the right. It's going to be foot.L. Foot.R. Now I'm going to extrude a new bone here, and then I'm going to disconnect it. We're going to name that bone Head IK, which stands for Inverse Kinematics, and then we can do something super duper cool. Add a bone constraint, Inverse Kinematics. We're going to make this head bone always point towards this. So to do that, gotta set up a few things. And you can see it's already kind of doing its job. But oh, do they not disconnect? Is that the problem? One sec. Oh. Where are you? One One sec. Restart. Inverse kinematics. Cow model. Why are we in the wrong? It always happens like this. Every time. Get too excited. Oh. Dumb me. I don't need to point it at the cow model, I need to point it at the cow armature. Silly guy, silly guy. Alright. So modify that. Cow armature. And then point it to the head IK bone. There we go. I'll do a chain length of 2 so the neck also moves. Now, this lets us look at that. Just smoothly control where the cow looks, and we can do this for the feet if we wanted to, for the tail. We can set up all sorts of cool rigging options to make the creatures animate very, very smoothly. And this is how you see it done in other games and things outside of Second Life. Although on a more complex level. This is just a quick example. But I'm very excited to be able to play with some cool animations in the future. Have them happen real smooth. Look at that. The cow agrees. And so if we wanted to, let's say we wanted to make this guy sit. So the rigging probably needs to be touched up a bit, so it may be slightly deformed, but we can try it. It will look better. Sad cow. So that was much faster for me to do, and looks a bit better. If we had the everything cleaned up for the rigging, it would look so much better too, and it would let me just fluidly let them sit down. There's so much there, so much power. But that is animation. So let's go back to our other blender and keep sculpting away. Alright, back to this guy. Get rid of this armature. And so if you've seen in Second Life, there is some mesh animation that looks really, really good and really, really smooth. if you press Control-Alt-T, you'll see that it's basically a bunch of invisible versions of the same model that are slightly shifting, and they just flicker those on and off, so it'll move very smoothly. But the problem with that is that it takes up tons and tons of geometry, which in Second Life would be the equivalent of land impact. So they have a higher Li. You can get away with it by making it really small, but it's just so unperformant with your GPU, and I think that Second Life probably has a hard time. I mean, I know for a fact. Yeah, it creates a lot of lag because your client has to deal with tons and tons of these vertices that are being rendered or being stored in your graphics card or memory that you're really not using. It's just invisible for almost the entire time, because there's only, out of probably 50 different versions of that mesh, you're only seeing one at a time. So it's 50 times more complex and taxing on your system than it needs to be, really. Which is why it was always tempting to go that way, just because the animations do look great, but it's just not performant, and it's not something that I would want to contribute to. Why did I kill Rain's wolf puppies? No comment. Plead the fifth. I don't know what you're talking about. That's, no comprende. Let's go to this back leg. I'm just twiddling around doing nothing really. Okay. I'm not even sure what I've accomplished. Let's see. Okay, so we started here. Okay. Okay, we've accomplished a little bit. We've made it look meaner. Better, I think. I think we've made it look better. We've done something, and that's what matters. Next question. Keep them coming. I can ramble. Let's see, that needs to be tweaked in a bit. Yeah, the back leg is the only thing that we haven't really hit yet. I keep messing with the face because one day I'll get it right. What are you guys watching? What's a good show you guys are watching? What's up, girl? Hi. I'm just talking to myself. It's pretty crazy, huh? Give me a little bit and we'll play. Mr. Robot. I enjoyed the first couple episodes of Mr. Robot, and then it just kind of felt like it was an exact copy of Fight Club at a certain point. And that kind of, once I made that connection, I had a hard time getting back into it. But a lot of my friends have told me they're enjoying it. What? Gotta wait, okay? Just wait. Aria wants my attention. Oh, she knows what time it is. We've run pretty late here. I know. Just give me a little bit, and then yeah. Close. It says something, but I don't think it's walk. She knows too many words for me to say what it is, but it is a certain time of day that usually happens towards the end of it, where you say to yourself, so yeah, for Fight Club, I forget exactly what the connection was, but it was hard for me to look past it after I made the connection. Oh, I actually remember it, but if I say it, it will spoil the entire show, basically, so I don't want to do that. In case someone here is interested in it, it was a good show. But I don't want to spoil anything. Hmm. Hmm. Looks like this back leg needs to be longer. Maybe not quite that long. Hmm. We're getting there. We are getting there slowly, very slowly. Hmm. Okay, girl. Give me a second. Alright guys, Arya really wants me. She really wants my attention right now. And I have been neglecting her a bit today. Had a lot of stuff to do, and then I streamed for longer than I thought I was going to. So I think it's about time for me to sign off. She just went over and played. Like she's mad at me. She is mad at me. She's got an attitude. All right. So I might finish this cow off stream. You guys got the gist of pretty much everything. I think that the more and more intricate the work I have to do, the less it looks like is happening, so it's not quite as interesting. Maybe we'll just do base models on the stream. I don't know. We'll have to see. See how things go. Or if there's something that you guys want to see. Give me that. Give me that. That connection there just doesn't look great, so let's just play with that for a second, and then I gotta go. I'm being guilt-tripped. I don't know if we'll keep this texturing I'm doing here, but maybe. Alright, Arya just brought her toy up to me, and she's being too cute to refuse, so I'm gonna go. Goodbye, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I will be back soon. Next week, definitely. Shooting for Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. But I always miss one day a week, it seems. One week I'll get all of them. Maybe that'll be next week. But this is what we have left at the end. What we have. Not too bad. Not too bad. Saved, thank you. So, just before I go, we will step through our progress here. From the beginning. In the beginning, it was balls. Then it was a wiener dog. Then it was a cool sunglass cow. Sunglass moose. And it was this kind of cartoony cow. And got some more details filled in, and pretty close to finished details. Maybe, you know what? Maybe I will do another stream of the cow, and we'll take it one more level. It's not a level you'll be able to see in Second Life level of detail, but we can sculpt some finer details onto it, and then maybe bake those on for the texture. That could be fun. So maybe we will see this in another stream. Alright guys, I gotta go. Thank you very much for watching. I'm stopping the stream right now. Good night.